On his wedding day, the officiant asked him, "Are you willing to spend your life with the woman in front of you?" He didn't answer, and it was me who opened the door for him. "He is not willing," I said. The guests were in an uproar. I added, "Coincidentally, neither do I." Jason Rivers' eyes drifted down the stage as he took my hand from my dad. Following his gaze, I saw Luna Summers. I fell silent, pretending I knew nothing. The MC's solemn voice rang in my ears. "Mr. Jason Rivers, do you take Evelyn Summers to be your wife as her husband? Promise to always love, protect, and encourage her in good times and in bad, in poverty and in wealth. You will never leave each other and spend your lives together. May I ask if you are willing to do so?" Jason Rivers pursed his lips and didn't say anything, but instead dropped his gaze to Luna Summers again. The MC repeated the question. Jason Rivers was slow to speak. The venue, which had been bustling with activity, fell into an infinite silence. I pulled the microphone from the MC. He wouldn't. My voice was like a thunderbolt that woke Jason Rivers up, and he retracted his gaze in dismay. There was an uproar from the full house of guests. The MC reacted quickly, and as he was about to speak in an attempt to ease the awkwardness of the scene, I slowly walked off the stage. I walked over to Luna Summers, ignoring her tear-filled eyes. I pulled the veil off and placed it on Luna Summers' head to the puzzled stares of the crowd. Startled by my sudden action, Luna Summers stood up in a panic. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she looked horrified. Luna Summers probably felt innocent. But why should she wear a white dress when I am the bride today? I held Luna Summers' wrist, not allowing her to break free. Luna Summers was staggered to the stage by me, and I shoved the bouquet into her hand. The entire room was silent. Jason Rivers was the first to react, anxiously pulling Luna Summers over and shielding her. The disgust on his face was undisguised, as if I didn't see it. I turned to face all the guests. "It just so happens that I don't want it either," I said in a single breath. As the words left my mouth, the screen that had been scrolling a picture of me and Jason Rivers suddenly flickered. It lit up again with an image of Luna Summers and Jason Rivers together. They were holding hands on the beach, kissing at the Ferris wheel, and even taking lots of lavish wedding pictures. Talking and speculation filled the room. I looked at the mingling guests and smiled brightly. "Sorry, everyone, but as you can see, I'm not the star of today's corporate alliance. It's my sister, Luna Summers." The Rivers family was humiliated by my actions. Jason Rivers stood on the stage, his face red and Luna Summers' face even paler as my dad whisked his sleeve and left the stage. Most of the guests left as well. Only the Rivers family was left cursing. The corporate alliance did not go ahead. The Rivers family's popularity in the business world took a nosedive and the company's stock price plummeted. Jason Rivers didn't even realize that I was going to bring his affair with Luna Summers to the forefront. Pressured by public opinion, Jason Rivers tried to get me to clear up the misunderstanding. I refused. I acted as if nothing had happened. And as usual, I gave my dad a report on the recent operation of the company, but I didn't expect Jason Rivers to bring Luna Summers to our Lynn family mansion. When the estate manager led them in, I leaned back on the sofa and swept a glance at them. Luna Summers was holding her hands in front of her, and beside her stood Jason Rivers, who was in a dark and uncertain mood. My dad waved his hand, motioning for them to sit down. Luna Summers was visibly relieved. She deliberately pulled Jason Rivers to sit in one place. And when she looked at me, the bottom of her eyes were full of resentment that she couldn't hide. "Sis, you really misunderstood me. I swear I didn't even think about ruining your wedding." Luna Summers' voice was tinged with resignation, as if she was trying to explain herself to me. I glanced disdainfully at Luna Summers. Jason Rivers was reluctant. "Evelyn Summers, I admit I've wronged you, but you can't embarrass us. The Rivers family like this. Is there any benefit to you in doing so?" Jason Rivers was filled with indignation. I couldn't help but raise my eyebrows. Didn't he say he came here to make amends? Why does he sound like he came here to ask for forgiveness? "So you can embarrass us, shall you?" My dad was so angry that he slammed the table with a thud, causing Jason Rivers to jolt. Jason Rivers moved his lips somewhat crestfallen. Seeing this, Luna Summers symbolically moved to the side, pulling an inch away from Jason Rivers. All I could feel was amusement, beginning to survey Luna Summers as if nothing was wrong until her eyes rested on her abdomen. Luna Summers quickly covered it up, wanting to hide it. I sneered and opened my mouth. "Dad, forget it. I can't just watch my sister pregnant out of wedlock and not be able to register the baby. Right, sister? My words caused Luna Summers' face to turn blue and white. Jason Rivers was even more unwilling to even pretend to protect Luna Summers. My dad's face was getting worse and worse. Luna Summers tried to speak several times until my dad couldn't stand it anymore and spoke coldly. I know what you want, but Xiaoyu has been groomed as an heir since she was a child. And in the past few years, she has even received a rigorous education abroad. Summit Enterprises will always be mine. Yes. Don't think about what you shouldn't think about. My father's words were loud and clear. It was a little hard to hear, but I loved it. Luna Summers' tears were like broken beads, snapping on her arms, and the resentment in the bottom of her eyes flickered once again. Jason Rivers nervously wipes Luna Summers' tears, not forgetting to glare at me in his haste. I pretended not to see it and patted my dad's hand, signaling him to calm down. Seeing that I didn't really care, my dad's expression softened. You guys go away, my dad started to blast people. Luna Summers, self-conscious of her embarrassment, and Jason Rivers holding back his anger both got up and left. When he looked at me again, my dad was filled with sadness and could only let out a soft sigh. If it wasn't for that Shin kid leaving, you should have married him. My eyes were suddenly sore and my heart was aching. Yes, I should have married him. I reluctantly gave my dad a smile to make him feel relieved. Jason Rivers, who hadn't taken more than a few steps, heard the conversation and froze in his tracks. When he turned back again, he collided with my line of sight from a distance. Jason Rivers' brow was furrowed, as if he was thinking about something. Then he snapped his eyes wide open and dragged Luna Summers away in stride. I looked at Jason Rivers' back and hooked my lips in a smile. I knew that there were some secrets that couldn't be hidden anymore. After leaving the family mansion, I went to the parking lot alone to drive. Just a few steps away, Jason Rivers appeared. He had me against the wall, his face stern. His arms were against my side in a confining gesture. Jason Rivers' eyes were red at the ends. He edged closer to me, his messy breath spraying my cheek. I frowned slightly, my stomach churning with sickening acid. Jason Rivers instantly looked like an enraged beast and violently pinched my jaw. I read a hint of cynicism in his eyes as the pain hit me. Evelyn Summers, what do you mean? I struggled to curl my lips. My eyes full of sarcasm. The silent response sent Jason Rivers into a rage. He went berserk and slammed the photo in his hand against my face. The sharp edges cut through my skin as blood spilled. I thought I saw the face that I had been thinking about day and night and couldn't forget. I crouched down and tried to pick up the photos all over the floor. You're not allowed to pick them up. Evelyn Summers, you're not allowed to pick them up, Jason Rivers hissed as he tugged on my arm, trying to stop me. I turned a deaf ear and pushed my way out of his grasp. The hate in my eyes was so obvious that Jason Rivers was so shocked that he let go of his grip on me. I went through the photos one by one and picked them up one by one. By the end of the day, Jason Rivers could only crumple against the front of the car and look at me. His hands were clenched into fists and his veins were already rippling. I carefully put the photos together and brushed off the dust that had just gotten on them. I took one step closer to Jason Rivers, treating him like he just treated me. I forcefully choked his jaw. I smirked, telling him word for word as if it were a lingering death. Jason Rivers, what a shame. You're just not as good as your uncle. Jason Rivers and I met because of a car accident. It was a bad one. One dead, one injured. Jason Rivers was the lucky one. He only had minor bruises. The one who died was his uncle, Ethan Shaw. My first official meeting with Jason Rivers was at Ethan Shaw's memorial service. That was also the first time I met Jason Rivers' mother, who was in tears. After the memorial service, Jason Rivers started to ask me to meet him more often. Sometimes I showed up. Sometimes I declined. Then Jason Rivers got down on one knee with a huge bouquet of brightly colored roses and wanted to confess his love to me. I purposely dangled him and didn't respond. That is until Rivers' family's company was on the rocks and I put my best foot forward to support it. Rivers' family struck while the iron was hot and offered a corporate alliance. I didn't turn it down. I hadn't gotten what I wanted. After ditching Jason Rivers, I drove to the cemetery. The closer I got to the tombstone, the more the tears welled up. It was clear that I had only been here yesterday. But it seemed like another century had passed. I came to see him after I ran away from the wedding site. I wanted him to see me in my wedding dress. The wedding dress is still the one we were together. He personally requested a well-known designer to help me customize it. Even the decoration of the wedding site was something we discussed together. He was Ethan Shaw. It was Ethan Shaw, Jason Rivers' own uncle, who had died in the car accident. I leaned back and sat in front of the headstone, my hand stroking the picture on it one at a time. The cold touch was a constant reminder that he was gone. He's long gone. It is said that nephews resemble their uncles. And Jason Rivers and Ethan Shaw look almost exactly alike. But Jason Rivers is nothing like Ethan Shaw except for his looks. Ethan Shaw and I met abroad. I was sent abroad by my parents to study finance and business administration. Ethan Shaw happened to be my teacher. The first time I saw him, he was wearing gold-rimmed glasses and a loose shirt that revealed his delicate collarbone. I couldn't help swallowing my saliva. And then he laughed at me for a long time, but I just see color. In a foreign country, I gradually relied on Ethan Shaw. I hate rain, but I started to pray for wind and lightning. As long as I said, "Mr. Shin, I'm scared," Ethan Shaw would immediately appear by my side. Ethan Shaw is 9 years older than me. We were in love for 4 years abroad. After returning home, Ethan Shaw said he wanted to take me home to meet the most important woman in his life. His sister Victoria Rivers, Jason Rivers, the day of Ethan Shaw's accident. We obviously made an appointment. I waited with joy for him to pick me up, but instead I got the news of his car accident. Ethan Shaw died on the way to pick me up. I spread out the photos Jason Rivers had collected one by one in front of the tombstone. Tears smashed onto the photos until I was tired of crying. On the eve of the wedding, I got what I wanted. Evidence of the truth about Ethan Shaw's death in a car accident, but I was afraid to tell Ethan Shaw. I gazed at the tombstone in silence until the harsh words Jason Rivers had laid down on his way out rang in my head once again. "Evelyn Summers, don't think too highly of yourself. We Rivers family will never wag our tails at you." I've known for a long time that the Rivers family has planted eyes and ears around me. That's why Jason Rivers was able to investigate my relationship with Ethan Shaw in 2 hours and why he was able to throw that material in my face. I'd put up with their little maneuvers until Luna Summers showed up. Luna Summers came to my door out of the blue to identify her family. She said she was my half-sister. I keenly smelled intrigue and calculation. Like a cat, I watched for mice waiting for an opportunity. Sure enough, Jason Rivers was seeing Luna Summers behind my back. When I showed the evidence of their private meetings, Jason Rivers would always bow down to me immediately. There's nothing between me and Luna Summers. Believe me, okay? I looked at the face that resembled Ethan Shaw's and remained silent. They had already set their calculations on my head long ago. It's Lynn they want. Counting on Ethan Shaw. Counting on my dad. Counting on me. I couldn't help but snicker. New grudges. Old grudges altogether. The wedding was completely squashed by Jason Rivers. It was said that a lot of money had been spent. A barrage of press releases turned into Jason Rivers and Luna Summers, a corporate alliance, a match made in heaven. Jason Rivers started taking Luna Summers to business parties. Luna Summers claimed her status as the daughter of the Lynn family. The controversy started to build up. As a result, Luna Summers was able to get Jason Rivers a lot of good business deals. The Rivers family became famous. Jason Rivers and Luna Summers have become very popular. A large number of journalists started to gather in front of Summit Enterprises with their guns blazing and wanting to know what happened. Some even squatted in front of my family mansion. My dad tried to clarify several times, but I stopped him. Not responding is the best response. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking at the towering buildings, coldly laughing. It must feel great to fall from a great height. The secretary knocked on the office door. A few seniors who had been working with Lynn for a long time walked in with faces full of indignation. "Show, what's the situation? The rumors outside are getting worse and worse. And old Lynn isn't stepping up. And what about that Luna Summers? Is she really your sister?" I nodded and shook. These guys are my dad's friends. Watched me grow up since I was a kid. And as early as a year ago, I started to gradually get in touch with the group's business. So, naturally, I met them more often. We made tea and chatted. In a few words, important information was exchanged. Jason Rivers is interested in a newly developed AI initiative. The Rivers family, which was originally focused on real estate development, wanted to expand into new areas, but artificial intelligence burns money. In order to get rid of the shackles of Lynn's money, Jason Rivers made rounds and rounds of financing. We raised our glasses and smiled at each other. Well, see, Jason Rivers' new program made rapid progress. There were many rounds of financing and billions of dollars were raised. Jason Rivers' new company was once touted as a techno-re. I watched the video interview with Jason Rivers in constant rotation and my mood was soothed. The car in front of the company slowly stopped and a man and a woman walked out of the back row. The woman slipped her hand into the crook of the man's arm lovingly. I hooked my lips and looked down on them from a high vantage point. Finally, I've waited for you. Jason Rivers. Jason Rivers strides into the conference room. Behind him was Luna Summers, her 5-month pregnant belly already slightly bulging. Perhaps not wanting to engage me, Jason Rivers gets right to the point. He hands over a letter. My knuckles tapped on the tabletop with a flourish. At my glance, the secretary took the letter from Jason Rivers' hand and stamped it with the official seal. The motion of the line made Jason Rivers' breath catch. Don't you want to see what it is? There was a hint of uncertainty in his tone. But I'm sure as hell. A year ago, Rivers' family was in turmoil, and Lind became the major shareholder of Rivers' family by way of capital injection. Rivers' family and Lind had long been deeply bound. To quickly unbind it, Rivers' family needed us. Lind's to withdraw our shares. I let out a light laugh. Withdraw the shares. Too clear. My words caused Jason Rivers' gaze to slump. 2 clearances. Is that how you want to draw a line in the sand with me? He pursed his lips. His voice almost squeezing out from between his teeth. Luna Summers' face plummets a few shades of white and her form falters a little. I laugh at Jason Rivers. It's better when you interpret it that way. A hint of anger floats across Jason Rivers' face as he wraps a hand around Luna Summers' waist. Evelyn Summers. You should have seen the news recently. You'd better think clearly. Of course, I thought it through. I instructed my secretary to get Jason Rivers to clear up what needs to be cleared up. Jason Rivers left with a black face. I was in a better mood. Jason Rivers' value continued to rise. At the cocktail party, he was the star of the show. As I leaned against the bar, Jason Rivers approached me with a calm demeanor. He touched the rim of my glass with a crisp clink. The red liquid shaking in the glass looked like the blood that had flowed all over the floor from the crush. Out of nowhere, I thought of Ethan Shaw again. Jason Rivers looked at me with a burning gaze and drained his glass. Do you regret seeing what I've accomplished now? He asks me. I put down the glass that Jason Rivers had touched and tried to leave. Evelyn Summers. Jason Rivers' voice became steeply urgent. Evelyn Summers, why did you agree to marry me in the first place? He tries his best to hide the tremor in his voice, but I catch it anyway. I look over at him with a beaming smile. Why? Because it's what you and your mom wanted. Isn't it? I sharpen my gaze, almost seeing right through him. You know what? Jason Rivers takes a step back, a flash of panic in his eyes. I shook my head to indicate that I knew nothing. Jason Rivers, since the purpose of corporate alliance has been achieved, don't bother me anymore. After saying that, I left with a big stride. Of course, I knew what Jason Rivers was talking about. What I should know, what I shouldn't know. I know. After the liquidation, the company quickly issued a withdrawal statement. My dad also finally stepped in to clarify. The rumors that had been swirling around finally came to an end. Yes, from the beginning, I was my dad's only recognized heir. Luna Summers was just a love child that my father wouldn't even mention. The long-gone family didn't care. The Rivers family had already made a few bucks when the corporate alliance was announced. Luna Summers came by a few times, but my dad swept her off her feet. I took advantage of Jason Rivers' new company as it prepared to go public when a rat has been hopping around for a long time. You have to come out and scare it from time to time. Lynn began a frantic campaign against the Rivers family. My move was like a fire beacon. It directly triggered the investors who had previously reached a preliminary agreement with Jason Rivers. They all turned against me. The break in the capital chain caused Jason Rivers' new round of financing to fail. Artificial intelligence product development and marketing all required huge amounts of money. For a while, Jason Rivers' tech company was hit hard. Not only that, but several real estate projects that the Rivers family had previously cut off from Lynn's hands have also come to a halt. Jason Rivers, who had been complacent about his accomplishments, panicked. He made several calls to me, all of which I refused to answer. Luna Summers came to see me with her belly. Jason Rivers' mother, Victoria Rivers, forced Luna Summers to come and beg me to give her money. She even threatened me with my father cheating on me in marriage and Luna Summers being a love child. I sent Luna Summers 4 words. "You're on your own." Before Victoria Rivers could get the press to expose my dad, Jason Rivers' company was finished. Jason Rivers embezzled money from the Rivers family and funneled it into his own tech company because he was strapped for cash. This was disclosed by an insider. Even though Rivers' family did not confirm it, several investment organizations were interviewed. Jason Rivers' company was seriously questioned for a while. It was left to fend for itself. The entire business tech community mentioned Jason Rivers with derision. Pseudo-innovation technology. Promotional videos were stolen and the core technical staff even falsified information. Jason Rivers' project was labeled as pseudo-technology. In the end, he was unable to resist the multiple pressures of money and technology. Overnight, the company went from strength to strength and completely collapsed. The tech company went bankrupt and Jason Rivers became infamous. Without Lynn's help, the Rivers family's original business was also in trouble. In addition, Jason Rivers had misappropriated a large amount of public funds, and now he had already lost his strength. I felt a pain in my chest for no reason. I went to see Ethan Shaw. The wind whistled late at night, and I wrapped my coat tightly around me. I sat in front of Ethan Shaw's tombstone, drinking and weeping. Ethan Shaw's wish in life was to help Jason Rivers keep the Rivers family business going until he retired gracefully. I went against Ethan Shaw's wishes, but I never regretted it. I rambled on all night until the sky turned white. Out of nowhere, I thought I saw Ethan Shaw. His eyes were full of heartache and disappointment, and his figure was getting farther and farther away from me. I knew that Ethan Shaw would definitely blame me. Why else would he never come to see me for over a year, but today he did. I blanched miserably, clawing vainly in midair. I dropped to the ground and lost my voice. "Ethan Shaw, you're going to blame me, aren't you?" "Don't blame me." "Okay." Actually, the first time I learned about Jason Rivers wasn't after the car accident. It was from Ethan Shaw. Ethan Shaw said his nephew's name was Jason Rivers. He always compared me to Jason Rivers and said I was as dumb as Jason Rivers. After we got together, Ethan Shaw would also bring up his sister Victoria Rivers. It was a rare time that Ethan Shaw was able to show tenderness except to me. I think Ethan Shaw must have loved his sister very much. Ethan Shaw said that Victoria Rivers had a hard time. Their parents died young and Victoria Rivers had to take the young Ethan Shaw to marry a man over 100 years old. Jason Rivers' father died, leaving the Rivers family in shambles. Victoria Rivers not only had to take care of the Rivers family's business, she also had to take care of Jason Rivers and Ethan Shaw. Luckily, Ethan Shaw was able to help Victoria Rivers with the company while he was pursuing his education. It was not until later that Victoria Rivers asked him to go abroad for further studies. On the day I returned home after graduation, Ethan Shaw quit his teaching job abroad. The Rivers family's company was in trouble, and because he was worried about Victoria Rivers, Ethan Shaw wanted to go back and help. When I returned home, I took over Lynn's. Ethan Shaw has also been helping the Rivers family, laboring hard, but none of us expected that Ethan Shaw, who was so full of gratitude, would die as a result. I sat on the ground and looked out at the stars in the night sky. My heart contracted one by one, clenching and throbbing. I was ungrateful for what I knew to be the truth. I was unworthy of Ethan Shaw. Ethan Shaw's death was no accident. Jason Rivers had gotten into an argument with Ethan Shaw in the car that day, and he went crazy and grabbed the steering wheel out of Ethan Shaw's hand. No one noticed the truck speeding toward them. If Ethan Shaw hadn't jerked the steering wheel at the last minute to turn the car around, Jason Rivers would have died. After the accident, the police cordoned off the scene for the first time. By the time I arrived, the scene was a bloody mess. I felt like lead from head to toe. I could barely move. I was breathing heavily. And it seemed to me that Ethan Shaw's breath was fading, but I couldn't find him. By the time I got to the hospital, Ethan Shaw had been pronounced dead and sent to the morgue. Passing by the ward, I saw Victoria Rivers. She was shushing her son at his hospital bed, crying her eyes out. I also saw Ethan Shaw's nephew, Jason Rivers. He was lying in a hospital bed, barely in any serious condition. I had my dad call the hospital leadership and I walked into the morgue alone. I shuddered as I lifted the white cloth. Ethan Shaw's face was covered in blood and he just lay there motionless. He was so clean, but his face was so dirty. I asked him a question, but he ignored me. I tried to clean him up with my sleeve, but the more I wiped, the dirtier it got. I hit myself in anger. How could I be so stupid? How could I not even clean my face? I asked Ethan Shaw to open his eyes and look at me. He still ignored me. His body was getting colder and harder. I realized that Ethan Shaw didn't want me anymore. The day of Ethan Shaw's funeral. The Rivers family didn't make a big deal out of it. Victoria Rivers leaned her head on the shoulder of her son, Jason Rivers, her eyes tearing up like a dike. I wanted to comfort her. She was Ethan Shaw's most cherished and respected sister. I walked up behind them and was about to speak when I overheard the conversation between mother and son. In that moment, I just felt like I was on ice. Mom, why didn't you tell me in advance when you arranged something like that? You almost killed me. Mom, why did Uncle have to come and get involved in our family's company? Mom, the police won't find out. Who knew you'd be in his car? And I didn't want him to die. It was his bad luck. Remember Jason Rivers? It was the driver who was drunk and had nothing to do with you. It was your uncle who wasn't in control of the steering wheel and you were the victim. Jason Rivers' voice was extremely impatient and not even a single tear fell from his eyes. Victoria Rivers, on the other hand, faked crying while comforting him. I simply couldn't believe my ears. What had Victoria Rivers arranged? What do you mean she didn't want him to die? Clumps of fog clouded my eyes until my vision blurred. My fingernails pinched deep into my palms and the stinging sensation told me that it was all true. I paid for the hit and walked into the operating room. I watched as Ethan Shaw was put into the cremation chamber of the crematorium. I watched as Ethan Shaw's flesh was wrapped inch by inch in tongues of fire and disappeared. I couldn't wait to find out what Victoria Rivers meant by that. I was filled with hate that burned like a fire in a furnace. Ethan Shaw wouldn't know that what he was paying for was wishful thinking on his part. Victoria Rivers and Jason Rivers don't need Ethan Shaw at all and even think Ethan Shaw is scheming. Ethan Shaw will never know that his sister whom he loves dearly has a vicious face. Ethan Shaw would never have known that his death was inextricably linked to Victoria Rivers. At that moment, I was glad that Ethan Shaw would never know. Otherwise, he would have been very sad. 2 months later, Jason Rivers walked into my office again, but this time he wasn't accompanied by Luna Summers. It was Jason Rivers' mother, Victoria Rivers. Victoria Rivers was dressed in a well-tailored dress that made her look dignified, but I knew she was dirty inside. Victoria Rivers took my hand affectionately and burst into tears. Jason Rivers, on the other hand, sits awkwardly on the sidelines. He pursed his lips and didn't say a word. "Show, are you blaming Auntie?" Victoria Rivers tentatively opened her mouth and asked. I raised my eyelids and glanced at her, not moving as I drew my hand back. My attitude was extremely obvious. Victoria Rivers softened her voice once more and lowered her stance. "Show, it's us, the Rivers family, who have wronged you and embarrassed you on your wedding day. It's all Jason Rivers' fault. I've already taught him a hard lesson." I raised my eyes to her once more. My tone held a hint of sarcasm. "Oh, how did you teach him a lesson?" I asked Victoria Rivers. Probably not expecting me to be so direct, Victoria Rivers choked. She rubbed her hands awkwardly and looked at me with a trace of imperceptible displeasure. "Shall you? Luna Summers is your sister after all. Moreover, Luna Summers is pregnant." Victoria Rivers paused, glanced at Jason Rivers, who was beside her with an ironic face, and continued to speak. "Shall you, Auntie begs you? Can you help us and give us the Rivers family a chance to breathe?" I hooked my lips, even feeling amused. At this point in time, Victoria Rivers even thought that I had flipped out with the Rivers family just because of that wedding. Victoria Rivers' hypocritical face made my stomach flip. I suppressed the urge to throw up and spoke faintly. "Can't." I excused myself and went to the restroom. After walking out of the office, I gave my secretary a look and turned to walk to the surveillance room. On the screen of the surveillance room, Victoria Rivers was standing in the doorway of the office, deadlocked against the door. She was directing Jason Rivers with a furrowed brow while spitting at me in an unpleasant manner. Jason Rivers sits down at my desk. He skillfully tapped the keyboard, entered the password, and opened my computer. Inside the computer, there was Arlene's proposal for a new project. This project is a real estate development project that we are in contact with. It has government endorsement and has a strong planning prospect. Rivers' family pointed to this project to flip the script. I wasn't going to get involved, but the Rivers family wanted it, so I had to give it a push. I watched Jason Rivers take a USB flash drive out of his pocket and make a quick copy. The process was quick and crisp, as if it had been planned. After they regained their composure and sat back on the couch, the secretary knocked on the door. Jason Rivers sighed in relief when he heard the secretary say, "I was going to a meeting." Victoria Rivers handed the secretary a meaningful look and pulled Jason Rivers away quickly. "Yes, my secretary is the eyes and ears that they planted beside me. Only they wouldn't even think about it. My secretary is the one I planted beside them." I arranged for someone to spread favorable information about the project in front of Jason Rivers to mislead them that they still have a chance to turn the project around. I also asked my secretary to intentionally disclose to them my computer password and the program I had already prepared. I also installed pinhole cameras in my office. They step by step into my layout of the net waiting to be harvested. On the day of the project bidding, I went to the site to observe. Jason Rivers' program report was very successful and directly on my version of the program for the shuffle. After the program, Jason Rivers also raised his eyebrows toward me. A look of determination. But Jason Rivers would never know that I didn't want the project at all. The end result, of course, was that Jason Rivers and the project team hit it off. I left with regrets, but inwardly I was overjoyed because of the cash flow requirements. Jason Rivers went to great lengths to get another round of financing. Victoria Rivers even mortgaged all of her family's properties. On the day the construction started, Jason Rivers and Victoria Rivers had just finished cutting the ribbon when the construction was stopped. A large number of people came up and surrounded Jason Rivers and Victoria Rivers in the center of the building. Before the police could be called, Victoria Rivers and Jason Rivers were already being dragged and pulled to the point where their clothes were disheveled and their faces were disheveled. It wasn't until government clerks intervened that the people stopped their aggressive behavior. Victoria Rivers was terrified. Jason Rivers grimaced as he held Victoria Rivers up. He snarled and questioned the law enforcement officers on what grounds they could stop their work. The law enforcement officer patiently explains why. Victoria Rivers fainted and Jason Rivers sat on the ground. I recognized the problems with the project during the preliminary research. It's just that Jason Rivers was so eager to flip the script that he didn't even sink his teeth into his research when he examined the project. And the misinformation I deliberately released made Jason Rivers even more certain. The site was a government demolition site and there were many holdout residents who were forced to be demolished by the project without the government's knowledge. And now even the compensation has not yet been negotiated. All the materials given to Jason Rivers by the project owner, from the initial land planning conditions to the subsequent construction permits, are all outdated and forged. The project owner has long since taken the money and run away. The Rivers family is finished. Because Victoria Rivers had mortgaged the entire property, the mortgage company forced them out. Jason Rivers had no choice but to take Victoria Rivers and Luna Summers and move into the apartment where he used to meet Luna Summers. Luna Summers, who was 8 or 9 months pregnant, couldn't stand the pain, and Victoria Rivers, who was already upset, was even less likely to take care of a pregnant woman's emotions. The two argued endlessly until Luna Summers accidentally fell to the ground when they pushed each other. In the hospital, the formed fetus was removed from the abdomen, not breathing. Luna Summers was completely devastated. When I arrived at the hospital, Jason Rivers and Victoria Rivers were sitting in the hospital hallway. Grimacing, Jason Rivers' face lit up when he saw me coming. He rushed to me as if he were flying and swept me into his arms when I wasn't expecting him. His voice was shaky and tired. "Xiaoyu, I was wrong. Let's make up. Help me." "Okay." I disgustedly pushed Jason Rivers away hurriedly. The secretary at the side pulled out alcohol wipes from her backpack and handed them to me. "It's filthy," I said as I wiped my hands. Jason Rivers' face went a shade of red and a shade of white, and the bottom of his eyes gradually colored with hatred. His scarlet eyes stared at me dead in the face. After I explained a few words to the secretary, I told him to go back to the office and wait for me first. When the secretary left, Jason Rivers suddenly went crazy and grabbed me by the neck. The air was getting thinner and thinner, but the next second, Jason Rivers was kicked to the ground. It was the police. I called the police. I pulled out the high-definition surveillance from the office that day. I accused Jason Rivers and Victoria Rivers of plagiarizing trade secrets. And I accused Jason Rivers of the intentional homicide he had just committed. Jason Rivers and Victoria Rivers were cursing at me before they were taken away by the police. Before leaving, I told them. Rivers family's company had been bought by me at a low price. I looked at them and laughed out loud. The mouse was destined to be eaten by the cat. Jason Rivers got a lawyer to defend them. Their attempts to gain my understanding were repeatedly rejected by me. I stood before them at the last pre-court mediation. To my surprise, Luna Summers came along. Luna Summers cried and hugged my thigh. Probably because she had just been discharged from the hospital. Luna Summers looked very weak and her face was even more haggard. I frowned and tried to dislodge her hand. She deadpanned and refused to let go. "Sister, I'm your own sister. Will you take me home?" Luna Summers sobbed, her voice full of begging. I shook my head and took out a document from my bag, throwing it in front of her. "Kissing sister. Auntie Shin, did you say she was?" As soon as my words fell, Victoria Rivers looked at me in shock. Luna Summers was the one Victoria Rivers retrieved in the first place. Luna Summers was able to appear in front of my dad. And it was also Victoria Rivers who was behind it. Even the paternity test was forged by Victoria Rivers. And I have long since found out that Luna Summers is not my sister, not my father's flesh and blood. Victoria Rivers did everything in her power to take over the Lin family's fortune. Luna Summers, holding the real paternity certificate, fell to the ground and did not return to her senses for a long time. What I didn't expect was that Victoria Rivers, who used to be so proud and arrogant, suddenly fluttered and knelt in front of me. I hurriedly moved a step to the side. Victoria Rivers kept bowing her head and apologizing to me. Jason Rivers was also dragged to his knees by her. I couldn't help but feel a chill as I watched them admit their mistakes like a harsh ghost. I wanted to seek out their lives. I bent down and my icy voice rang in their ears. "Did you think of today when you were counting on Ethan Shaw and counting on our Lin clan? Be good and go pay for Ethan Shaw's life." Victoria Rivers was full of disbelief. I hooked my lips and said my last words. "I forgot to say I am Ethan Shaw's fiancé." I gave the truth about Ethan Shaw's car accident to the police. The complete chain of evidence rendered Victoria Rivers mute. That driver was a gambler, collected $10 million from Victoria Rivers because of a huge debt. The original plan was for the truck to just run over Ethan Shaw's car and maim Ethan Shaw, but Jason Rivers caused the accident. Victoria Rivers didn't go overboard with the recourse, citing shock and disorientation. The driver only got 7 years. Victoria Rivers was smart. The evidence of the original purchase was tightly concealed by her. Even the driver in prison kept her mouth shut. It took me a long time to get through to them and a lot of work to get the driver to talk. But before I could gather all the evidence, Victoria Rivers suddenly came to Luna Summers. Victoria Rivers' eyes were full of greed. I wondered what she wanted to do while adjusting my layout. I pretended not to know anything, but the mother-son duo were as intent on me as they'd ever been on Ethan Shaw. My heart went cold for Ethan Shaw again and again. I decided to raise them to the clouds and then tear down the ladder myself. I wanted them to be ruined for the rest of their lives. When I came out of the court, I was finally relieved. "Ethan Shaw, I've avenged you. Don't ever blame me for taking the law into my own hands." The day the dust settled, I went to see Ethan Shaw again. There were a lot of leaves on his tombstone. I cleaned it up for him. He loved to clean. I took a big bunch of Utoma flowers and gently placed them in front of his tombstone. I wanted to tell Ethan Shaw that I love him till death do us part. I leaned against the tombstone, my face full of tears. I wanted to tell Ethan Shaw that I really miss him. I caressed Ethan Shaw's picture and murmured softly to him, "I'm sorry, Ethan Shaw." My voice was getting choked up. "Ethan Shaw, you haven't proposed to me yet. Ethan Shaw, you won't be offended if I say I'm your fiancé, will you? Ethan Shaw, look at this. Doesn't it look familiar?" I took out a ring from my bag. I put it on my ring finger in front of Ethan Shaw. The ring was brought to me by the undertaker that day. He said it fell out of Ethan Shaw's pocket. When I got back, I was very sick. In a few days, I saw Ethan Shaw. After all this time, Ethan Shaw was finally willing to visit me. The sky is filled with broken diamonds that spell out a galaxy of stars, and the blue flower plants wind their way to the stage under the pilot light. In the starry blue sea of stars, Ethan Shaw walks slowly in a stiff white suit. In his hand, he holds a bouquet of pure white. "Rosie, you stole of flowers." He fished out a diamond ring from his pocket and knelt down in front of me. He asked me, "Oh, will you still be willing to marry me in your next life?" I wore the wedding dress that he had customized for me and wept. "Ethan Shaw, I am willing."